Shawna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God. Hello and welcome back to Real Sisters Real Talk. I'm Jody and here with my sister Shawna. And we just had such a fun conversation last week on talking about kind of how just revisiting the markers that we have as we kind of leave 2024 and enter into 2025. How do we enter into 2025 intentionally? How do we have these benchmarks of evaluating our growth? Are we leaning in? And so there's ways to do that with physical growth. Shawna talked about benchmark exercises, but also spiritually, like how do we mark these markers and evaluate how we're growing, and then do that intentionally, like keep track of it, make sure that we're paying attention to the learning and the growth that takes place. And so Shawna had been sharing about this decluttering that she's taking on in her home with physical things, but also the learning that's taking place, how God is using that word that he's given her and the physical work that he's assigned her to do and teaching her spiritually how that applies to her spiritual life. And so as we were closing, I felt like we were kind of rushing on it, is the decluttering the boot room. We talked about these bags, and sister, I too am a collector of bags. I don't know what it is. I actually have bought bins for my back of my car. I want to say trunk, but I have a SUV. So like to hold the bags because otherwise they get chaotic. So I keep the bags that I use all the time accessible, and then there's more stored in these and I'm just going to confess it, 3 little bins that are full of bags because I collect bags. And Johnny's like, this is too many, and I'm like, no, I need these.
Okay, wait a minute. If you've got 3 bins full of bags, the bins themselves would take up a lot of room. So when you buy things and you put them in the bags, do you bring the bags into the store first of all? Do you remember to do that?
Yes, I faithfully bring bags into the store.
Okay.
And then like when I go to Costco, I just say no boxes. And when I get to the car, I bag my groceries because that makes it easier to carry them in to the house. And so, I do use my bags, and they do wear out, and I do have to throw them away. But I'm telling you, I have like of just canvas, like grocery bags, not even like, the bag that you get from Target or whatever. Like I legit could go years and years and years without ever purchasing a bag. So I do collect them. But then even like, and that's why I often don't take the plastic bag. But like just that illustration that you gave last weekend, that we just take things that are handed to us without thought of taking those things on,
like bags,
right? We just take them, and then we think that we have to keep them because they have some kind of value, even though we don't really know how we want to use them. And so just like words, one of the things that just really has like struck me in that is like words spoken over us. We take those as truth, and we actually hold on to them because they were spoken over us. I have a dear friend that I just love so much, and there's something that was spoken over her so many years ago, and she brings it up often because it's something she's held on to. It's not truth. It wasn't kind and loving. It wasn't a God-given word. I do not believe that for a second. And yet she has held it for so many years because it was handed to her. And I just think, I do that. And I don't want to do that. This year, I want to declutter some of those things. And I think like even just what we did, that work we did and continue to do, this is, oh my goodness, this is a shift of this recognizing the false identity. The things that work is a lot of letting go of some of words spoken over us in the past. And so I had shared, I got to speak with somebody recently about kind of some work she's doing in that, going through that book, Living Fearless by Jamie Winship, and just hearing her talk about things that had been, she mentioned things in 3rd grade, in like just things in the past that had been spoken over her, or she had overheard a teacher say, or like whatever it is. And she had still been holding those things onto those things. And so now she's decluttering. She's doing the work that needs to be done.
That's so good. I think I shared this. I may have shared the story before, but my youngest daughter is, her major is music business and entrepreneurship. She's a singer songwriter. She's going to be a music producer. She's moving to Nashville for her engineering part of her sound engineering study. But there's a gal in our church who was talking to her about singing, and she said, I just love that you sing so much, and it's something that I've always wanted to be able to do, but when I was in middle school, the choir director called me out in front of everybody and said, you don't sing, when they were doing a performance. And she held that, like she took that as her own, like, I cannot sing, I should not sing. And it has impacted, like, she's always wanted to sing in the choir, but she's always felt like, no, I can't, because of what this choir director spoke over me in middle school. And Haven was so upset when she heard this. She said, I am so sorry that anybody would speak that over you. Your voice is a muscle, and anybody can train that, like any other muscle in your body, anybody can train the muscle to sing. And she was like, what? She's my age, and just coming across this information that she's spent decades believing that she couldn't sing. But that's just an example of how the words that are spoken over us, how we carry them, and then how they influence our lives, and they influence how we show up and how we participate or don't.
Yeah. So I literally, you shared that a few months ago, I think when we were talking about the false self. I I Shauna have thought of that so many times. And when I sing and worship, I'm it's changing the way I sing in the worship service, because I'm like, no, because I have always said I have a terrible voice. I have a terrible voice. And I'm just going to say, like, so Shauna has a beautiful voice, and I've always loved that. And that's been, I mean, since she was little, she's always had a beautiful voice. And I feel like I haven't. That is something that, since you told me that about what Haven said, it's a muscle that can be developed. It is changing the way I see my voice, sister, and what I bring
That's
in
so good.
worship to the Lord. And, I've said before, I used to say, oh, when I get to heaven, I'm going to sing beautiful. And in the last couple of years, the Lord has shifted that comment to, really, in my heart, I know that He hears a joyful noise when I sing. The person next to me might not, but God hears a joyful noise when I sing, because it's in worship of Him. But again, there's this shift that's taking place of,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, this is a muscle God you gave me. I actually get to steward that and like build this muscle and make a joyful noise. So I
Yeah.
still will not sing for you
So
people, but oh man.
this is a little bit of a soap. Yeah, don't even say that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
no, no,
call
no.
you out on
You're
that,
right. Thank
Jodes.
you.
Like,
No.
so I, I, this is a bit of a soapbox for me. This is the thing that I'm passionate about, because I think we do this in spirituality all the time. We do it in life, but we do it in spirituality all the time. We go, oh, Jody, she's such a good speaker, and so and so is such a good singer, and so when they pray out loud, have you ever heard her pray out loud? Man, when she prays out loud, it's just like she brings heaven down. And we think that they have something that we don't have. Now, it's just okay. So if you saw somebody kicking around a soccer ball and they could handle the soccer ball really well, you wouldn't say they have soccer and I don't have soccer. You would say they have learned to handle that ball.
Yeah.
And I could do if I put the amount of time and energy into what they have put into learning to handle that ball. But we don't do that spiritually. Yeah. So that's not the main topic of today's conversation. I just think it's important to say, a lot of times I think we dismiss ourselves in areas that God would just want us to strengthen that muscle.
Yeah.
If you find, I don't know, whatever the case may be, spiritually, you feel like somebody else has something that you don't have, what would it look like to ask God to strengthen that muscle in you?
Right. And but that is such a good word, because even like as we're talking about processing out 2024 and um how we want to actually put good disciplines into 2025 that will help us remember our learning, or whatever it is, to be kind to our future self. We've talked about to be kind to Jody and Shawna in December of 2025 or January 2026. We actually, if this is something where you're like, but I've never journaled out, I've never processed the year out, or I've never this
Read through the Bible.
right, I've never read through the Bible, I don't have a practical discipline of, no, this is not something that we have learned, and we've, we're in such a learning process. It's all of us can lean in. God, what are you inviting? we've used this word before too. God, what are you inviting me into for 2025? No, God,
Yeah.
what are you commanding me to do? Pastor Ken, as we kind of closed out the year, he, Pastor Johnny had preached, but then Pastor Ken stood up at the end and he said, somebody had said to him, and it's a young woman who works out at the gym a lot, and it's part of like I think it's even part of her career, is building these muscles. And he said, when you started working out the gym, your body began to change. Is that correct? And she said, yeah. And he said, and it started with one workout, right? And just committing to this and doing this faith. And then you had to do it faithfully. You had to, so Shawna, you started out the new year. You're like, I fell off the wagon. I have not been working out. And now I am working out and I was sore and blah, blah, blah. And you had to get through all that. So, but each time you do it is a vote to your future self, right? So each time
Right.
she started working out, it was a vote for who she was making herself, her body into being. The same thing is true with our spiritual disciplines. So he
Mm-hmm.
said one, can you read one chapter a day? Can you commit to just reading one chapter a day? Because as you read one chapter a day, a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, you are building that spiritual muscle. So it's not a
Mm-hmm.
matter of, I need to do this because so I can check it off the list. Like, no, this is a vote for your future spiritual self. So instead of beating yourself up for what you're not, how about we just do one thing that moves us to what we want to be at the end of the year spiritually?
It's so good. That's so good. And I can't think about that without, because one of the parts of the conversation we had last week too was like, there are things that like I need to stop collecting bags. I need to throw away bags, but I also needed to stop taking them.
Yeah.
So the vote for your future spiritual self too makes me think, okay, if you were to take that physically to say like, I worked out this morning, yay, I'm going to go eat a bag of Oreos. Like there are things that need to go too. You know what I mean? Yeah, start working out, but also um, it's a vote for your future self to not eat the bag of Oreos. And I think a lot of times there are things that we think are a treat that we hold on to that aren't even actually good for us. Like they
Yeah.
taste good, but they're not actually good for us and they're not helping us to become who we want to be. So we're putting the work in to do the workout, but then we're sabotaging our own kind of destiny by holding on to sin and stuff that just tastes good, feels good, whatever.
Right. Or is just familiar. And a lot of times when
Mm,
we do things like that, I mean, even thinking about like, eating the wrong food, but also going into habits that are not good for our spiritual walk, we go back to what's we think is comforting.
familiar.
It's what's
Mm.
familiar, right? And we think it's going to meet a need, and the truth is it doesn't. It makes us feel worse. And so we do that physically, we do it spiritually. um so yeah, let's put the effort in and move forward into what is life-giving, and do the what, how do you, this isn't even a saying, and I still can't get it right, but like the vote for yourself, for your future self, like a
Yeah.
vote of being who you are intended to be. That's kind of what
Mm.
happens when we make the right choice. And so yeah, it's just a good word, good learning, good practice. So Shauna, you had said there were kind of three takeaways you got from this decluttering, this physical act of decluttering, and then kind of just
Yep.
applying it spiritually too. Can you share the third one? So first, let's say, okay, just in review, you shared two. So if you want to review those and then move to the third one.
Yeah. The first one was I just had, okay, so I cleaned my boot room, which, if you don't live in the Midwest, is a glorified coat closet. It's like a walk in closet where you keep all of your coats because you need so many of them because you need one for every season and whatnot. So, anyway, so I had to get rid of coats that didn't fit anymore. And I realized there are things in our life that just don't fit anymore. They don't fit who we have become, what God has done in our lives. So we can get rid of that stuff. The second thing was my baggage collection, my literal bags that I was collecting, and just how um, what's the baggage that needs to be tossed? What are the bags that you hold on to that need to be tossed? And then we talked about what we take and what we don't take and all of that. But one thing that I'm experiencing now that I'm living life with a clean boot room is that the things that are actually useful to me are accessible. There's a streamlinedness to it by getting rid of the stuff that was, I didn't realize how much stuff was just simply in the way of what I just needed to be about and what I just needed for the day. And I feel like, the spiritual learning in that is, oh my goodness, this could go a lot of different directions, but just how often in my day am I focused on what God has for me in that day, and how much of my day is clutter?
Ouch, right? So much of my day, so many of my thoughts are
Oh yeah.
just clutter.
Yeah. We've had a lot. I mean, the thoughts, you can't like have this conversation and not talk about how we're impacted by our thoughts.
Right? I even, I think I shared this towards the end of the year, and it was really kind of a learning coming out of 2024. And so I'm still, still just wrestling it out, but I'm a learner. And so I like to take information in. Well, I find that I actually use that as a crutch instead of processing what the Lord is bringing to me or dealing with some emotions I need to deal with or some issue that maybe I need to kind of work out with the Lord. I put on learning because it's good, right? It's godly stuff. It's a godly book, and or I'm listening to scripture, even scripture. I'll just put
Ah.
scripture on in the background because that, but I'm fighting actually decluttering my thoughts and dealing with the bags that need to be dealt with so that I can actually
Mm-hmm.
find the things that are rich and pure and holy. And so yeah, that is really really good and powerful and applicable, and I'm learning how to walk in that.
I think I do that too. I think this is why when I teach about once a month, and when I'm teaching and even when I'm teaching and I'm studying, I over prepare and over study, and much of what I'm studying ends up on the cutting room floor. It doesn't
Yeah.
actually make it to, the teaching time, which is not bad. But one of the things we talked about, some questions last week about like, what are you proud of, was one of the questions that we listed in the podcast to reflect on. And one of the things that I'm proud of for 2024 is I've come a long way in my process of preparation and delivery in teaching.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, it's when I look back 12 months ago, where I was to where I am today. And you have to have opportunities to be able to make those adjustments. But yeah, I think learning can be one of those areas where it's how much of this is clutter and how much of this is obedience.
Right. And am I running from, because honestly, like the studying part is the fun part for me. When I start to write, and the teaching part is honestly fun for me. The writing part is the hardest part of the process. And so I wonder if even some of my studying is to not have to start writing. I'm still gaining information. I'm still gathering. I'm still
Yeah, right.
instead of just stepping into the next step of what, God's like, okay, can we move forward here?
You're ready.
So
Pull the trigger there, sister.
yeah,
You got
yeah.
what you need. Do what you need to do.
I love that.
So the other thing in regards to the closet, I guess the last thing, the boot room,
Yeah.
would be so several years ago, I had a Franklin planner that was by Julie Morgenstern, and she's got this whole philosophy of scheduling, and she kind of likens your calendar to like picture your calendar like your closet. There's only so much space in your closet, and there's only so much that you can fit in there. And the more that you try to jam in there, the less accessible things are, and creating margin and having cushion and that sort of thing. And this really hit home because when I worked for a leadership organization. Uh, when I first started there, my boss at the time scheduled his appointments by the hour. And so he he'd schedule one appointment from 8 to 9, and then the next one from 9 to 10, and the next one from 10 to 11, and the next one from 11 to 12. And I was like, broski, like you have to get 20 minutes down the road to get from point A to point B for your next appointment. And you don't get to, just like time warp yourself on over there and jump into the next appointment. Like you literally have to schedule
Travel time.
because I was making appointments for him like on the half hour, and he's like, what are you doing? You're messing with my whole schedule by making, and I'm like, you need time to get from point A to point B. So, but anyway, as I get into, when we look at our calendar in that way, only having so much space. Okay, when I cleaned out the boot room, I found things that I didn't even know that I had because they were jammed in between other things and pushed back to the back of the closet. You know, when you're looking for a coat and you can't find it and you're like, oh man, did I give that one away to Goodwill? Or, did so-and-so borrow that one, or whatever the case may be, and you just can't find it. But and then even you're trying to put stuff in there and there's no room to be able to put stuff in there. I do a lot of cramming, and that makes even the things that are there that are mine to use and to benefit from difficult to find, or like not in the condition that they should be in when I find them.
That is such a good word. And we do that. We do that in our mind. We do that with physical things. I'm going to just, as you're sharing, there's something that's coming to mind of whether it's my learning or an application, I don't know. But one of the other things you said, sister, in last week's podcast is you said now that the boot room is cleaned out, you like to just go in there because it's organized and it feels good, and you can find the things you want to find. And so you actually like opening that door rather than like, oh, please keep that door shut. But you actually like opening that
Right.
door so that you can see like, oh, this feels good. It's kind of like, I'm putting words in your mouth, but like, oh, I can take a breath kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sister, isn't that true when we actually deal with, okay, so I'm going to give my I had shared a few weeks ago that in 2025 I'm going to, on a rhythm, create once a week, create 30 minutes to sit quiet with the Lord, and just, whether I have a question for him or I'm just going to be silent, or I'm going to go for a walk and just chat and listen
Enjoy
and
his company.
enjoy his company, right? So when my mind is so cluttered, I can't even enter into that space easily. It takes me like 10 minutes to enter into that space because there's so many things I have not dealt with. I can't get to the space of just being in his presence. It takes me a bit to get into that peaceful place of being in his presence.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing that on a regular rhythm, that stuff is cleaned up. And when I enter into that space, it's peaceful. I can enter in quickly. I can take a deep breath. I like to use, like, when I sit quiet with the Lord, I like to use instrumental Christian music with no words, because if there's words, then I start, singing along in my head.
Get
But
distracted.
yes.
Yeah.
But now, like, when I put that music on, I physically feel something change on my chest of like, okay, here we are, Lord. Oof, yeah. And I do, I pray all the time. But this is significant, shutting everything down to be in his presence for an extended amount of time, and expectant of what that holds. And so opening that door, instead of like, oh, I'm here, it feels more like,
Right.
oh, Lord, I'm here. Here we are. Thank you for this space. It feels different. So that's taking your
Yeah.
decluttering and adding my own learning in there. But I just feel like God was showing me that as you were sharing.
Yeah. That that is real. I feel that. And it makes me even think about, like, when you see someone that like is just good for your soul, and you might see each other across the room. I have a friend that I've mentored, and she's so precious to me, and she lives out of state. And when her family goes to our church, and so when she's in town visiting, like for the holidays and whatnot, and you just kind of like scanning the worship center or whatever, and we kind of lock eyes, and it's like, oh, like, I just can't wait to talk to you. There's this anticipation of like, I have a hug for you. And it's going to be so good to chat when we get a chance to just love on each other and be together. That is the opportunity. That is the joy that we have in front of us in meeting with Jesus. And if it doesn't feel that way, it just makes me wonder, what needs to be dealt with? What's the clutter that would make meeting with the person who loves you perfectly, who knows all the things, who sees you, who's not stuck in seeing you in this moment of time that you're in, but sees you for all eternity, sees the redeemed, unbroken, untrying to, not trying to impress anyone, you that he created you to be. That should be like the biggest sigh to just be alone with him.
So I feel like that's a great question to process as we even come out of the podcast today. Like, let's sit with that. Bring that to the Lord. Lord, what is the clutter that is keeping me from entering your presence fully?
Hmm.
What is it that I need to let go of so that I can actually enter into this time? What is it that I need to not only let go of, but maybe remove, get rid of, so that I can enter into this your presence fully and completely? Because he'll show you when we ask him. He shows us, and I'm gonna spend some time sitting with that and letting him show me. And you know what the thing is, like, I'm just gonna say, like, when we sit with questions like this, so often we can think, oh, I know I'm doing good here. I'm doing good here. And he's like, oh, sweet thing. If I could show you
Hmm.
this, there's so much more. There's freedom to come. And so, but we need to actually slow down and ask those questions and give room for him to share what we're missing.
Man, we've been talking. Oh, that's so good, Jodes. And we've been talking so much about the processing and reflecting. And I just, because I love you, I want to tell you, your stuff isn't invisible. Your stuff is pretty evident, and we can choose not to be self-aware and think that nobody knows what's in the closet, but we wear our exasperation. It shows up with us in every conversation, in every place that we serve, in our relationships. And so, yeah, we're just kind of not as savvy as we think we are at keeping that stuff
Isn't
behind the closed door.
isn't that the truth? Even like kind of stuffing the stuff down. I literally, Pastor Johnny preached at the end of 2024 at our church, and he talked about a season of his life where he was really dealing with. He had moved to California, like 6 hours away from his family, and he thought that he was handling it well. He was pretty young when he moved, and he thought he was handling it well. All of the new job, the new place, all the new things, and then like around Christmas time, he ended up rushing to the hospital because he thought something was wrong with his heart, but he was having a panic attack. And they said it's anxiety. And he's like, I don't have anxiety. And they're like, oh, no, 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 you do. So he had shoved it down, shoved it down, shoved it down. And it just leaked
Wow.
out until it became such a big thing. But that's true with all of our stuff like that. What you're saying, sister, is like, we can think, no, I got it covered. I'm good. I got it covered. I've got that hidden, but it leaks out. It leaks out all over relationships and our circumstances and all of that stuff. So we want to bring that to the Lord. Let him heal us there.
Yeah. I definitely thought this whole declutter thing was a Shawna thing, but it feels like the more that we have the conversation, there's something more there. Maybe there's something there for you as you're listening to, yeah, like Jode said, just consider, what is the clutter? What
Mm-hmm.
needs to be, what's actually robbing me of the abundant life that Jesus offers and promises in him? And He's just good. He's faithful. He'll do the work of coming alongside you, entering into the boot room with you, and helping you to sort through what needs to stay and what needs to go, and healing you, releasing you of baggage, words spoken over you that were never meant for you to hold on to or carry into the next chapter. And he does all of this for you and me because he's real. We serve a real God, and he really loves you.